Sometimes doctors do things that hurt you. What? Implicit memory? So gangster, right? Welcome to the Trauma to Triumph podcast. I'm Anabell Ingleton and I'm your host. This is a show that focuses on all things healing, growth, and transformation. From modalities to the best books, possibly some resources you've never heard about, and the best and new experiential therapies, products, and services that really offer true change and relief. We're talking emotionally, physically, and mentally, brain, body, and soul. I'm sharing with you the best in the healing industry. We're having conversations with therapists, coaches, healers, and entrepreneurs. I'm also going to be sharing with you interviews with my clients, people that have coached with me in my coaching practice, whether it be men and women in my one-on-one program, Trauma to Triumph, or women in my group coaching program, Bloom. I'm going to be pulling back the curtain so you can get all the behind-the-scenes details about where they started, what their biggest struggles were, what we did together, and how their life is different now. Was it worth it? All the ups and downs, and we're just going to get really honest about how this work made a big difference in their lives. So if you're ready for some honest conversations, painful truths, helpful information, and real practical tools that actually work, you're in the right place. Did I mention we cuss a little bit here? Let's get going and welcome. Welcome back to another episode of the Blooming Podcast. I'm Anabell Ingleton. I'm your host. So today I want to share with you guys, I'm going to break down a little bit about what we went over last week in episode number 78, where we talked about a behind the scenes of how I coach and why. And I gave you guys a lot. I shared so much good stuff. I got so many messages and DMs from you guys, by the way, saying that people really understood themselves better, which I thought was so great because that's my goal, obviously, with the podcast, for you to learn concepts and ideas and tips, but then that you can apply to you and your life, and you can learn about yourself so you can start learning how to get out of your own way, right? So, and learn the things that are getting in your way. So one of the things that I talk about a lot is removing mental and emotional blocks. And in last week's episode, I talked a lot about integration and all the things. If you haven't listened to that episode, please go listen to it. But one of the things that I think I know I covered really well, but there was some pieces that I think were really important that I maybe did not make clear. And so this is a little bit of a piggyback on last week's episode. So this week we're talking about implicit and explicit memories, because I feel like I need to give you guys a really good breakdown. This isn't going to be a long episode at all, but it is going to be informative. So in last week's episode, I talked about how my intention with clients as a coach is to help you guys get back to wholeness, to integration, to where your brain and body are speaking to each other well. Thoughts and emotions are being connected really well. Your right and left brain hemispheres are connected really well. And your memory, your states of mind, or your parts, and your narrative story about your past are all of those things, which are 5 different things. All of those 5 things of different ways of integration, all those 5 modes of integration are working well. We want to get you really integrated. And one of the things that I shared was about implicit and explicit memories. And those have to do with your memory, your coherent narrative story of your past, and understanding your states of mind. And it sounds a little weird when I say states of mind, but it's okay. If you're a little confused, listen to that episode. I think I did a really great job of breaking it all down. So when I talk about states of mind, this refers to times where you experienced something in your past and you had this experiential learning, and it was, whether it was frightening or threatening or safe, or it was just whatever it was a lot of heightened emotion. And sometimes we remember things that are really good. We remember a lot of great memories, right? We have a lot of great ideas and things that we remember from our past and that are stored in what's called implicit memory. So when I say states of mind, picture just a memory, a part of you, like 15-year-old you in high school when she was in 9th grade and when she started. That's like a state of mind that you had when you were 15. And another way of describing it is if you were a tennis player, or if you play a sport, or if you play an instrument, or there's a hobby that you do, but let's get specific about, let's say, a tennis player. a tennis player, when they are about to go on the court, what do? They're dressed a certain way and they have a racket and they have balls and all the things, right? So they put on their outfit, maybe like a polo and a little skirt if you're a woman. I don't know what guys wear, short shorts, I think. And they have their racket, they have their balls, and they have other things. And you get into your tennis playing state of mind. And you act a very different way when you're playing tennis than you do when you're at work on your 9-to-5 job or your entrepreneurial job. And when I say state of mind, kind of picture it that way. If I talk about one of your parts, or you could talk about your tennis playing part, right? You could talk about your entrepreneurial part, your part of you that's a dad or a mom or a wife or a girlfriend or anything like that. Okay. I thought that might be a way that you can understand it a little bit easier. So when I talk about your parts or your states of mind, that's what I'm referring to. And you have them now. And then you have some that were all, your 15, like I said, your 15-year-old part. That was a 15-year-old state of mind when you were in your freshman year of college or high school. So it's very different. So having said that, when I talk about implicit memories and explicit memories, go back to episode 78 so you can get a little bit more context there. But I want to really explain the difference between implicit and explicit. And I'm going to give you guys an example so you can understand it even better. So we have explicit memory and we have implicit memory. We have short-term memory. We have long-term memory. And first, when we experience something, the brain keeps it in short-term memory. If it's not that really important or it's not necessary for you to hold on to because whatever thing you just learned, you're not going to use it again, your brain kind of like forgets about it and doesn't really matter. But if it's something that it seems is important, it's going to store it in long-term memory. And when you have an experience, when you learn something, when you have a memory of something, if something is important, it can get stored in long-term memory. And if it's something that happened in the past, your brain is going to store it as such. It's going to say, I went to the store on Sunday. I went to Target and I bought toilet paper and tissues. I had that. And you know consciously that happened in the past, right? You can think of Sunday driving over there at like 4:00 and picking up those things and coming back. So explicit memory is conscious recall. So you have the ability to kind of go in your memory bank, think about it. What did I do on Sunday? Oh, I went to church. We went and had brunch and then we went to Target and I bought tissue and toilet paper. So you know what you did. And it's very clear to you that you are going into your past. So explicit memory is like that. You can think of things like, what are all the animals that belong on a farm? You could think of cows and chickens and all the things, right? So pigs. You know from your memory what animals belong in a farm, right? So these are things that are autobiographical, like either by date or just facts and things that you just know. Facts you know, but some things are episodic and like autobiographical, so you know what day things happened. So that's an explicit memory. Implicit memories are felt. They're experiential. They're behaviors, and they have more of a feeling tone to them. So the way you can tell me how to ride a bike, it's kind of hard to kind of explain it. I mean, you can, you get on the bike and you sit on it and then you balance and then you move your feet and then you balance while you're moving your feet and you have to stare frontwards and you look straight while balancing and moving your feet. There's a lot to do, right? So learning how to ride a bike is something that you're taught by someone like showing you, but you remember it with a feeling. So remember, that's what implicit memory is. It's stored as a feeling. It's not autobiographical. You can tell me when you learned to ride a bike. I was 7 years old and my dad took me down the street and we did this a couple times and I learned it when I was 7. You could tell me what color bike you had. You could tell me how many bikes you've had and how many times, when was the last time maybe you rode a bike. And that's explicit, but how to ride a bike, it was stored as a feeling. Okay. And I think in the past episode, I didn't really get clear on that you can have billions of things stored in implicit memory, good or bad, safe or threatening, negative or positive. Okay. So we remember all kinds of things. You remember some things that are like implicit memory are driving home, driving a car, tying your shoelace, the steps that you do to take a shower. So have you ever driven home and got home and thought, I haven't even really been here driving. I've been thinking about this like project I had to do at work or this fight that I had with my husband. And how the heck did I just get home? Well, the reason sometimes you don't even realize that you're driving and your mind is somewhere else is because you don't have to consciously think about driving home because you've done it so many times. It's rote. It's habitual. It's automatic. You're on autopilot. This has happened to everybody. And there's times when you're even, scarily, people have said that they've been drunk and they drive home and they're like, I don't even know how I got home. Thank God that there's these things that you store in implicit memory that you do them so often. Your brain says, Annabelle's going to do this a lot. I need to remember this. And it's not necessarily like, directions, like you turn right on Smith Street and left on Orange Street. There's things like that, right? That's more explicit memory. You have to know where to turn left and turn right. But doing it because you drive home so often, your mind will store it in implicit memory and it will automatically put you on autopilot so that you do it again. And again, you don't even sometimes have to use your conscious thought to drive home. And sometimes you'll miss an exit because you're like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going home, right? Because your brain your mind just goes on autopilot to do it. So these are things that are stored in implicit memory. Driving, taking a shower, like what you do. A lot of us have steps when we take showers. I know I have steps and I probably don't even have to. Sometimes I think about work a lot and like things I'm going to say on YouTube videos or podcasts or things like that, or I'm thinking of a client and I'll be thinking and then I'll just like be done taking a shower and I'm like, I haven't even been here, but all the steps were done, right? So you can see how implicit memory is stored. It's experiential. It's things that you do. It's felt. So that's implicit memory. But I want to point out some other really important facts about implicit memory. They don't have a timestamp on them. Like explicit memory has a timestamp on it and you know what you did on Sunday. Implicit memory, again, because it's just a felt or experiential thing that you do, it is just a feeling. And the reason it doesn't have a timestamp on it is because, especially things from your past, is because it's stored without a timestamp. You don't need your conscious mind to store things in implicit memory. So that's the kind of, not scary, but that's the really interesting thing about implicit memory. You can remember something, your brain will store something if it believes it's really important. So why would your mind think that this is really important and you have no conscious decision about storing this memory in your implicit memory? Why? A couple reasons. If it's important, if you do it really often, and you've done it enough times where it's like, I need to remember this because I don't want to have to take my time to remember how to drive a car every single time. I just know it by learning it implicitly. I just know how to drive a car, right? So it's like, I don't want to remember step by step. Your brain thinks it's important because you do it every single day, maybe 2 to 3 times a day. So now you remember it. So it's because it's important or because there was a lot of a deep emotional charge in it, good or bad, happy or sad, threatening or safe, whatever it is, right? And your brain says, I need to remember this because Anabell was like really moved by this. These are good things happen here, right? You can remember, you have that feeling. You can remember like giving birth to your children or getting married or falling in love or your first date or when someone said, I love you, or when there's lots of great memories that you have, graduating college, getting a really big paycheck, getting your first client, so many things like this. And you could take yourself back and you can remember that feeling of how good it felt, right? So there's good things that you remember and things that you feel often. Again, your brain will remember it. So if you feel a lot of good feelings every time you eat candy, your brain's going to say, anytime Anabell wants to feel good, I might suggest to her that she should eat candy. So remember some of the things that when you have strong emotions attached to certain things, your brain's going to say that thing felt good. She felt amazing. She felt strong emotions. So if you ever want to remember something implicitly, if you want to do it automatically, feel strong emotions during it. So your brain can store it in implicit memory. And I promise you this works. Do it a couple times and it's going to get stored, maybe even once. So like when I have entrepreneurial clients, especially clients who want to become coaches, I always tell them when something good happens in your business, like getting a new client, getting paid, doing a sales launch, doing something that was really scary, but you got it done, celebrate it and get really excited. So your brain learns that good things happen. You have a really good feeling when you do sales calls or when you do clarity calls or when you have to go live on Instagram or YouTube or something, things that don't feel good, but then you did it and you felt a lot of relief. Celebrate the crap out of it because it gets stored in implicit memory. If you do that a couple times, now your brain says, I want to feel good. Oh, I'm going to go make some money. I'm going to go do some sales. Like right? That's why winning feels really good to people. They say, I want to win all the time because winning feels so good. Your brain wants to feel that again. But then it could also be used against you. If you drink and it numbs you out, let's say drink alcohol and it numbs you out and you're like, oh, I don't have any pain when I drink alcohol. I get numbed out. Well, your brain's going to remember that made her feel good. Maybe and by good, it means I had the absence of pain or of suffering or emotional, anger or whatever. I'm going to have Anabell drink. And so remember things like that even bad feelings or doing things that are kind of harmful for you. If you felt good when you did them, your brain's going to remember and it's going to want you to do it again. This is where addiction is formed. Okay. An implicit memory. The reason it doesn't have a timestamp on it is because when you have something, specifically when you are in a stress response, you guys. So I talk a lot about stressful past events, trauma, things like that. And when you experience something where you went into a really heightened stress response, fight, flight, freeze, shut down, right? What happens there is the amygdala gets really fired up and your PFC, your brain goes offline, your prefrontal cortex. And if you're watching this on YouTube, I'm doing the hand model of the brain. So what happens is this is the brain stem right here at your wrist. This is your limbic brain. So this is the limbic area, which is your amygdala, your hippocampus, your insula, the hypothalamus, things like this. And then this is your prefrontal cortex. So it covers the amygdala and the hippocampus. This is the fear center and memory, right? So when you do something that's really scary and you go into a stress response, so if you get broken up with by somebody out of nowhere and it was really shocking, somebody passes away and it's really shocking, you get into a car accident, you get bitten by a dog, something happens to your children, you get sick, just anything, a car accident, whatever. I think I just said that. You can go into a stress response and your amygdala gets fired up with the fear center. And what can happen is if it's really, really heightened, it kicks your brain off, which is what Dr. Dan Siegel says. You flip your lid and your prefrontal cortex comes offline and your hippocampus goes offline. So we need our hippocampus online and our prefrontal cortex to put a timestamp on things, but specifically your hippocampus. That needs to be online in order for your brain to say, here, it happened on Sunday at 4:00, like going to Target, right? So if you got stressed, it was a stressful event and it was scary and your stress response gets turned on. The hippocampus goes offline, no timestamp. So now it doesn't have a timestamp, but guess what does get stored? The memory, the felt sense, that feeling of being scared. Let's say you got in a really big car wreck and it was so frightening. That memory can get stuck in implicit memory without a timestamp. There's no problem with it, but it could become a problem. So this is what happens when things get stored in implicit memory because they don't have a timestamp attached to them. Now, so how do they get recalled, right? The way that we can consciously recall an explicit memory, how does implicit memory get recalled? The way that it gets recalled is when you feel the same feeling that you did when that implicit memory was stored. So if you were in that heightened, fearful, oh my gosh, or something happens that reminds you of that experience that you had when that implicit memory was stored, when it was encoded, when it was put into implicit memory, that's how it gets recalled. So let's say you were driving and now every time you get in a car now, you get scared because you were in a car when you had that fearful feeling. A lot of people get in car accidents and never want to drive again because it was such a scary experience. Being in a car reminds them every time of that scary thing that happened. So let's say you go into a car and you notice every time you go into a car, you start getting really anxious and scared and worried. And you're like, why am I getting like this? Why can't I drive calmly and just go to work? There might be some implicit memory attached to it. And what happens biologically, you go into a car, your body remembers implicitly that felt experience, that bodily. Remember, this is behavioral and experiential and felt and feelings. Your brain remembers being in a car and having that painful feeling, that fear. And so it wakes up that memory. What happens here though, is because that implicit memory doesn't have a timestamp, you get the same feeling, fear, while you're in your car, in your garage, turning on the engine. And you're like, oh my God, I don't want to drive this car. This is scary. And you stop driving. You get out of the car and you don't drive. And you don't understand, like, I just want to go to the store, but I'm too scared. You don't recognize that you are in an implicit memory or you have an implicit reaction to getting in a car because there's no timestamp on it. You don't know that you're being taken over by that implicit belief or that memory, that implicit memory. So this is what we call triggers now, right? If you're in an experience where someone hurt you and in your past you had an experience when you were hurt by someone, you get automatically taken over by that part in implicit memory and you start reacting in the way that you did. Maybe here's the other part is that you start reacting in the way that maybe you didn't get to do to defend yourself in that moment. But here's the thing with implicit memories. They have schemas. And if I don't want to go into schemas, you guys can listen to episode 78. Otherwise, this episode will be like 10 hours. Most implicit memories have schemas attached to them. These are like little predictions of what's going to happen, what you need to do if that thing happens in order to protect yourself, people you love, or to make yourself feel better. And so you go into that, you get grabbed by that implicit memory. It comes up, it gets activated. You don't know that you're being driven by this implicit memory because there's no timestamp on it and you're not able to see like this is a past memory. You start fighting your boyfriend because he asked you to go on an amazing, surprise you with an amazing trip and it ruined your plans that you have today, let's just say. And you're mad because the experience you had before when you were younger, let's just say, is when you were younger, no one ever took care of you. Nobody was ever there. And because nobody was ever there and took care of you when you were a child, you've learned to be really independent and just do everything on your own and control everything and plan everything and analyze everything and strategize everything. Because that's what's kept you safe back then. That's what kept you safe in that stressful time when you were younger, when you were alone. So now when someone comes and says, I'm going to plan this trip, I planned everything, you just come and relax. It's a really great thing that your partner's doing, but because you feel kind of, you've never been in that experience where someone's taking care of you. And when someone takes care of you, it goes contradictory to the belief that you have to do everything yourself and you have to control everything. And so when someone wants to do something, you're not in control. And when you're not in control, it feels like the way you felt when you were younger and you had no control and you were alone and you couldn't do anything. It can bring up that attached schema that the implicit memory or belief has attached to it. And it says, I need to take care. And let's say you get mad at your boyfriend for planning a trip and you say, no, we're not going to go. I'm going to do it. How dare you plan a trip? I plan things. Like, you can't do that. And he's like, what the F is going on? I wanted to do something romantic and beautiful and kind for you, and you can't even accept it. I thought I was doing something good for us, and he doesn't understand. And you never allow anybody to do anything for you because you have this implicit belief that I have to do everything myself, because if I let anybody close to me and let anybody take control, they're just going to abandon me and hurt me, and I'm going to be vulnerable to getting hurt like I did when I was younger when nobody was there for me. It's important that I do everything myself. And you see how you won't know that you're being driven by this implicit bias, by this implicit schema that's attached to this implicit memory. And this is the thing that gets us in trouble as adults now, because they have these behaviors. They're called adaptive behaviors they were good to do when you were younger. When you were younger and alone, you had to adapt to that environment and you had to protect yourself by being in control. But now being in control all the time doesn't help you, because in situations like this, when someone wants to help you, because you're not a little girl anymore and you have a boyfriend and he wants to do sweet and kind things for you, you see how that behavior is maladaptive, and it can really get in your way now. It can really hurt you. It can ruin relationships. It can hurt others when they're just trying to love you. But you don't let yourself be loved, because letting someone get so close and control things, even though it's not control, they're just planning something beautiful. By you letting go of control, you're vulnerable to being hurt like you did when you were younger. Like you were when you were younger. So it's so fair, right? So this is the difference with implicit memory and explicit memory. This is how the behavior that implicit memory has attached to it can hurt you now as adults. And this is the work that I do with my clients in Bloom. This is the amazing, amazing work that I'm doing with my clients and that I do with all my one-on-one clients, or used to do in Trauma to Triumph. I do the work with them so that we can get to understand what behaviors in your life right now are causing you a lot of pain, and they're messing things up, so to speak. And you are at the place where you're like, Anabell, I know that I shouldn't be doing this thing. I know I should let my husband work and pay for things. And he says that I could be a stay-at-home mom, and I want to let go, but I feel like I can't, because I never let him just take care of us. I have to feel like I have to be in control, and I want to be home with my babies, but it feels impossible. There's something else there driving your car, so to speak, quote unquote. And I do the work with my clients, and this is the work we're doing in Bloom to help you understand what behaviors are making life really difficult right now, that are keeping you from doing the things you want and keeping you from doing the things that you don't want. And this works with the behaviors that you don't want to do, guys, in the sense that, like, let's say you want to start a business, but because you're so scared of rejection, you have a part of you that doesn't let you start the business because you're so scared of failing. The rejection means failure, and then failure reminds you of something that happened in your past. So it works both ways. And we're doing this work in Bloom. We're finding out, I'm taking my clients through an amazing process that I help my clients with to get to know their behaviors that are hurting them, what's causing them, what beliefs and schemas and implicit beliefs are causing them. We unearth these conditioned beliefs, and we go to work to undo them and replace them with really helpful beliefs that let you change the behavior and change the belief so that you can do all the things that you want to do. So you can stop working, so you could be a stay-at-home mom, so your husband can take care of things. So you can start the business, so you can lose the weight, so you can fall in love, so you can start dating, so you can quit the job and go to school, whatever it is that you want to do. Most of us don't understand that this is what's driving our behavior or stopping us from taking certain behaviors or certain actions. And this is the work that I do with my clients. So if this is something that when I explain this to you right now in this episode, if you're like, this feels like me, I can tell that I have something else driving, and something just comes in and grabs me, and it looks and feels like I'm self-sabotaging. This is what people call self-sabotage. I want this consciously, and I know how to do it, but I'm not doing it. Something always gets me to stop. And I'm so excited to do this work because this is the kind of work that really helps people feel so safe doing all of the things that they want to do so badly and haven't been able to do. You feel so clear and so understood and so good when you do this work. This is what my clients always tell me, like, I make sense. Like, now I understand that I'm not dumb. I'm not lazy. I'm not crazy. I'm not mean. I'm not angry. I'm just being driven by this implicit part of me that I didn't even know existed. And if I get a hold of this, and now that I worked with you, Anabell, and we've done this work, like, I can be soft and I can let go and I can let people love me and I can do the things that I want to do. And life really opens up when you are able to do this work, guys. So if this is something that you want to do, if you're a woman and you feel like speaks to you, get on the wait list now, because we are launching Bloom in just 2 weeks. And I'm so, so excited to start working with you to help you really open up your life and understand what's really going on deeply, at the roots, and get to the root of the issue. We're not just treating symptoms. I'm not telling you just change your thoughts so you can start the business. I'm not just teaching you strategy. We're getting to the root cause issue of things. I want to give you guys a really quick example of this story because I thought it's such a good story. And I remember when I heard it, I was like, this speaks to implicit beliefs so perfectly. So there's this story of this woman, her name, let's just call her Madam X. And Madam X had an injury to her hippocampus. So she wasn't able to put timestamps on things. She had no long-term memory. And she would every day, would wake up, everything from the next day was completely erased, and she couldn't remember anything that she did the day before. So she was being treated by a doctor, and he was trying to figure out if there was an actual hippocampal injury, or if there was just she just had implicit stuff going on that needed to be repaired. And what he did one day, so every time he would see her, he would have to be like, "Hi, Miss Madam X, I'm Dr. Smith." And she would be like, "Hi, Dr. Smith, nice to meet you." She didn't know she had met him 15 times prior. This is just because she didn't have short-term memory to remember the day before. So one day, what he did was when he came into the office, she would always shake his hand. And so the next time she came into the office, he had a pin in his hand, like a needle. So when he shook her hand, he poked her and he said, "Hi, Madam X, my name is Dr. Smith." And they shook hands and she said, "Ow." And she jumped back because he poked her hand, and he said, "Oh, I'm sorry." And, they just continued talking, and she just was surprised that her hand got poked. And then the next day, remember, she doesn't have explicit memory. She doesn't have short-term memory. She cannot store things. She forgets everything. She comes in the next day and she's like, "Hi, my name's Madam X." And he's like, "Hi, I'm Dr. Smith." And he goes to shake her hand. And when he goes to shake her hand and she goes to reach her hand towards his, she stops and she jumps back and she doesn't shake his hand. And he said, "Oh, I'm sorry. What's wrong?" And she said, "Sometimes doctors do things that hurt you." What? Implicit memory? So gangster, right? So think about that. How crazy is that? Not even crazy. Like, it makes sense, right? She doesn't have explicit memory. Her hippocampus doesn't put timestamp on things, right? But she has access to implicit memory. So her brain was able to remember that poke in her hand because it hurt her, right? It was surprising and it happened and she wasn't expecting it and it hurt her. So she stored that painful experience in implicit memory. So the next time she saw him and he went to shake her hand, she rejected and said no because she remembered the pain of the needle prick. She didn't remember him, but she remembered the needle prick. And this is the power, you guys, of implicit memory. If there was a shocking emotion, an emotional charge attached to an experience, you may not remember the experience full on, but or like the memory, or like it may be fragmented, or you don't remember when it happened or who it happened by or whatever, but you remember the emotion and the thing that hurt. She even had a way of saying it. Remember, she said, "Sometimes doctors do things that hurt you." And this is the thing about implicit beliefs, you guys. They sound axiomatic. They just sound like things that are true and are known. And she doesn't know why she believes that. She said it in a very believing way, right? She said it with so much belief. She said, "No, I'm not going to shake your hand because sometimes doctors do things that hurt you. So I don't know why I don't want to shake your hand, but I don't want to shake your hand." So this can, like, if you think about what could happen now for us people, right? Not somebody with hippocampal injury. You may not want to date men that, and I've talked about this before in another podcast episode. I remember now, or realize now, that I had this like desire or this draw to men that were like charismatic, Hispanic, salt and pepper hair musicians that were like my father. But at the same time, I feared them because my dad hurt me. My dad abandoned me, was what I felt, right? Is what my parts of me believed. They implicitly remember that sadness, that aloneness, not having my dad. And so I had this like implicit belief that when now that I know it doesn't grab a hold of me because I have explicit and conscious knowing of this implicit memory. I had to figure this out through the work that I do with my clients, that I did with myself and the person that I worked with, that I learned this from. And I had to realize that the reason I kept on choosing these men that were aloof, charismatic, salt and pepper hair musicians that were never really available to me, but that I kept on being drawn to them, was because and I was, at the same time, I was very scared of them. Like, I always had a lot of fear around them, and I never was able to really be myself because I had this implicit fear of them because I felt like they were going to leave me. This belief, you guys, ruined my last relationship. Not my marriage, but like a relationship I had last year. And this is when I started like really going into more of the schema work, and it's blown my mind. And now that I know I made an implicit belief explicit, now I know about it. Now I know that I have an implicit part of me that when I get drawn to, or it's not even that, I don't even get drawn to them anymore because I already worked it out. And this is the work we're doing in Bloom. I used to be very much like a victim, or felt like drawn to, but at the same time scared of men like this. And because of this, I did a lot of dumb shit in my past relationship with this guy. And it was all implicit. It was completely driven by implicit behavior. The entire relationship, I was a hot mess. And it was because I was acting from that schema. And when I would I never knew it until after I did the work. So if this is the work you want to do, ladies, sign the F up now. I have limited spots that I'm only going to take a certain amount of women in the group. I want to work with women that are really serious about this, that understand that this is the work that we're doing, that are committed to really digging in there and understanding like what are the behaviors that I'm doing now that are jacking me up. And I really want to get a hold of these and fix them and not fix them, but just like understand them and work with them so that I can rewrite them with the truth, and we can change them and stop behaving in those ways that are not helping me now or helping you now. So I hope this episode was more helpful. I know last week I covered a lot, but I think in this episode it was a little shorter. But this is the work we're doing. I love to do this work. This work fires me up. And if you want to get to the core of this stuff, sign up. Link is in the show notes. If you're watching this on YouTube, the link is down here below. Sign up. This program, I hope, will be running forever, even if you're watching this in the future. And if you're curious about learning your implicit beliefs and understand how they may be affecting you now without conscious awareness, this is the program for you. So I hope this was helpful, and I will see you guys in bloom, and I'll see you next week. Talk to you soon.